The Battle of Flers Courcelette was a battle within the Franco-British Somme Offensive which took place in the summer and autumn of 1916. Launched on 15 September 1916, the battle went on for 1 week. Flers Courcelette began with the objective of cutting a hole in the German line by using massed artillery and infantry attacks. This hole would then be exploited with the use of cavalry. It was the third and final general offensive mounted by the British Army during the Battle of the Somme. By its conclusion on the 22nd of September, the strategic objective of a breakthrough had not been achieved. However, tactical gains were made in the capture of the villages of Courcelette, Martinpuich and Flers. In some places, the front lines were advanced by over 2,500 yards by the Allied attacks. The battle is significant for the first use of the tank in warfare. It also marked the debut of the Canadian and New Zealand divisions on the Somme battlefield. The debut of the tank. The project to develop the land battleship had commenced in the summer of 1915 under the initiative of the British Land Ships Committee, with the objective of developing an armoured vehicle that would break the deadlock of trench warfare. Under the highest degrees of secrecy, the tank, as it later became known, was designed and built, with the first prototype of the Mark I rolled out in January 1916. Just less than 6 months after its first tests, General Sir Douglas Haig had wanted to launch the first mass tank attack on the opening day of the Battle of the Somme. However, the manufacturers could not have the tanks ready in time for the first attacks on the 1st of July. 2.5 months later, as Flers Courcelette was being planned, the tanks were delivered and Haig had General Sir Henry Rawlinson, his sub-commander in charge of 4th Army, incorporate them into his battle plans. From the beginning, the tanks were challenged by having to traverse the heavily upset terrain of the Somme battlefield while still beset with numerous mechanical failings and manned by crews that had had little training in their operation. Nonetheless, the decision was taken to send the 49 tanks that were available into battle on 15 September. He was warned against this by the engineers who were responsible for the creation of the tank and his sub-commanders, such as Ernest Dunlop Swinton, and the French government, which sent Colonel Jean-Baptiste Eugène Estienne and Sub-Secretary of State of Inventions Jean-Louis Breton to London, hoping to persuade the British government to overrule Haig. The primary concern of those who did not want the tank used was that they wanted it kept secret until they could be massed in larger numbers and be more likely to lead to a major breakthrough. Objective. Like the earlier offensives of the 1st of July and the 14th of July, Haig had hoped to achieve a breakthrough of the German defences, enabling a return to mobile warfare with cavalry units pouring through a hole punched in the line by a successful, swift and decisive infantry strike. Though the British, Canadian and New Zealand forces did make significant gains on the first day and in the week that followed, a breakthrough did not develop and the Somme front reverted to an attrition struggle, which, with the onset of wet weather, created dreadful conditions in which the infantry had to live and fight. Battle. Reserve Army. The Canadian Corps made its debut on the Somme on left flank, at the north end of the attack. Starting from a line anchored on the ruins of the Pozières windmill, the Canadian 2nd Division advanced in an arc stretching from north to northeast, focused towards the fortified ruins of Courcelette and the fields to the west of the village. The Canadians saw considerable first-day success on 15 September, advancing approximately 2 kilometers in their initial attacks, capturing their objectives in and around Courcelette village. Noteworthy efforts from the 25th Battalion and the French-Canadian 22nd Battalion were delivered in the process of clearing the German defenders from the village and holding it in the face of 4 days of enemy barrage and counterattacks despite being cut off from supplies including food and water. 4th Army, after having struggled for the preceding 2 months to take control of it, on the commencement of the battle, the British 47th Division succeeded in clearing the last German-held sections of Highwood, sustaining heavy losses in the process. The New Zealand Division fought for and captured a position known as the switch line between Highwood and Flers after 30 minutes of fighting. The British had initially set their eyes on the position 2 months earlier during the Battle of Bazenton Ridge. In the centre of the attack, 2 villages were captured. Martinpuich was wrested by the 15th Division, and Flers was captured by the British 41st Division, but these were more than 2,000 yards short of the lofty final planned objectives of the fortified villages of Goudecourt and Les Buffs, which lay still further to the east. To the south, on the right flank of the attack, where Haig had hoped the hole would be opened in the German lines to allow the cavalry penetration and breakthrough, the attacks faltered. In this area, a fortified German position known as the Quadrilateral redoubt sat east of Ginchy, but due to poor weather that prevented flying and poor sight lines, the exact position of the trenches of the redoubt were unknown to the attackers. The artillery preparation and tank support did little to neutralize the defenses and left the trenches and wire protecting the position largely intact, which allowed the German garrison to batter the 56th Infantry Division and 6th Division of the 14th Corps attack. The 6th Division finally took the Quadrilateral after 4 days of attacks on the 18th of September. With the Quadrilateral quieted, the Guards Division made considerable headway, advancing 2,000 yards, but they were stopped short of their ultimate objective, the village of Les Buffs. To take the remaining objectives, the British Fourth Army launched the Battle of Morval on the 25th of September. French operations. By the 15th of September, the French Sixth Army needed a pause after its recent attacks to relieve worn-out troops and bring forward supplies. But the artillery of 1st Corps supported the British 14th Corps at dawn, and its infantry attacked at 3 p.m., beginning a bombing fight with the Germans at Bois du Age. Ground was gained north of La Priez farm, but no progress was made at Rancourt. 5th Corps to the east failed to reach the south side of Saint-Pierre-Vaast Wood. 7th Corps made no progress east of Bouchalvaines, and 33rd Corps straightened its front. On the 16th of September, the Sixth Army conducted counter-battery fire in support of the British, with the infantry prepared to follow up if the Germans were forced into an extensive withdrawal. After the 16th of September, 5th Corps extended its right flank and 6th Corps took over the 7th Corps front. Preparations were made for a Franco-British attack of the 21st of September, which was postponed to the 25th of September. Despite the reorganization, 1st Corps made 2 surprise attacks late on the 18th of September near Combles, which gained ground. German artillery fire in the area was heavy, and counter-attacks at Célé-Coutard during the night of 19-20 September. At La Priez farm and Rancourt during the morning, and the village of Bouchalvaines was held by the French only after desperate fighting. South of Bouchalvaines, 6th Corps repulsed an attack. The 10th Army attacked on 15 and the 17th of September, capturing Berny, Denny-Ecourt and Vermando villas. Despite numerous German counter-attacks, but this success was not followed up due to lack of reserves. Aftermath analysis. The performance of the tanks was patchy. Of the 49 ordered, only 32 were able to reach their assigned start positions on the battlefield, and of them, 7 failed to start, leaving 25 moving forward at the commencement of the attack. In the end, the tanks proved to be largely a psychological asset, emboldening the attackers and intimidating the defenders where they moved forward. Tactically, however, they provided little advantage or support to the attackers, with most breaking down or becoming immobilized in the terrain of the battlefield, and only 9 actually reaching and penetrating the German lines. Even where they were successful, they were hard-pressed to advance across the cratered battlefield faster than a soldier's walking pace. When Winston Churchill, formerly head of the Landships Committee, but now a backbench MP, heard of the tank's use and performance at Flers Courcelette, he responded, "This priceless conception, containing, if used in its integrity and on a sufficient scale, the certainty of a great and brilliant victory, was revealed to the Germans for the mere petty purpose of taking a few ruined villages. The flaws that were exposed in the designs of the Mark I at Flers Courcelette led to design improvements and the development of better tactics, which made the tank a formidable weapon by the war's end. On the opening day of the battle, Raymond Ascot, son of the British Prime Minister, was killed, as was Conservative politician Charles Duncombe, 2nd Earl of Feversham, whilst Harold Macmillan, a future Prime Minister, was seriously injured. Ultimately, the Battle of the Somme would continue for almost 2 more full months after Flers Courcelette. But none of the battle plans that followed set the grand objectives that Flers Courcelette or the July battles of Albert and Bazentin Ridge had, when total breakthrough was the intended outcome of the attacks. Though there was success found in pushing the Germans back at Flers Courcelette, the failure to decisively cut through the German lines convinced Haig and his army commanders Rawlinson and Gough to scale back their objectives in further attacks on the Somme to smaller bites of strategically significant territory and limited attacks. Victoria Cross Sergeant Donald Forrester Brown of the Otago Infantry Regiment, Lieutenant Colonel John Vaughan Campbell of the 3rd Battalion Coldstream Guards Division, Lance Sergeant Frederick McNett of the 1st Battalion Scots Guards, John Chipman Kerr of the 49th Battalion. Commemoration. The Canadian actions on the Somme are commemorated at the Courcelette Memorial, which sits beside the D929 roadway, just south of the village of Courcelette. The New Zealand Memorial to the New Zealand Division's actions on the Somme is found on the former site of the Switchline Trench on a lane off the D197 road running north of Longueval, and the New Zealand Division's memorial to its missing in France is located near the Commonwealth War Graves Commission Caterpillar Valley Cemetery, just east of the village of Longueval. The 41st Division Memorial sits in Flers in commemoration of their liberation of the village. This memorial, topped with a bronze battle-dress soldier, has been made particularly famous in its depiction as the photo on the cover of Rose Coombs' quintessential battlefield tour guide before endeavours fade. The statue by Albert Toft is the same figure used at the Royal Fusiliers War Memorial in London and as part of a sculpture group at Oldham War Memorial. A memorial cross to the Guards Division sits beside the C5 road between Ginchy and Les Bafs. A memorial cross to the 47th London Division sits beside the D107 road just inside Highwood between Martinpuich and Longueval.